This week, probably like a lot of you, I watched the events unfold this week that really were heartbreaking for me. I watched the full video of George Floyd being killed. Just so painful. And I've watched the reaction since, like many of you have, trying to make sense of it all. And I have just been really overcome with sadness about it. I know different people have different reactions. Mine has been intense sadness. I've wanted to speak in the middle of all of this to maybe your shock and distress with everything else going on, but I really needed a few days to just let my own emotions kind of settle, and to maybe be able to understand more of both the event, but also the things that have happened since. What we've gone through in the last 2.5 to 3 months has created incredible amounts of stress for you, and we've talked a lot about it in the series of keeping it together, how to keep it together while we're staying apart. The virus has come as an invisible and incredibly contagious pestilence. It has inflicted some folks, especially in certain areas, but it has infected some folks, and it has affected everybody in some way, economically, school for a lot of you, jobs. And because of all of the magnitude of this, there's a lot of people who have different ways of coping. Some have minimized it. They've minimized the effects of the virus. They've minimized its existence. They've denied it, maybe, some. And this usually happens until someone they know or someone that they care about, or maybe even somebody that they know or care about, has someone they know personally who is affected by the virus. But then there is the issue of what we're dealing with now. The problem of racism. This is a plague, a pestilence that has been in our country for a lot longer than COVID-19. Really since its very earliest founding, since the beginning. And this is a difficult thing for us to grapple with. It really is. Like the COVID virus that we've had to deal with, it is invisible. Racism is invisible. You don't really know about it, what people think. It is contagious. It gets passed along in ways, and maybe generationally in families. And it is really easy to minimize it and deny it even, to say it's not really real, or it's made up, or it's all in people's heads, they're just reacting. And then you're forced to see it, like we have been forced to see it in the last week. You see, like I said last week, we have to remember that Jesus Christ is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He's over everything. And these are not times for us to be in denial, but times for us to be in a place of learning. There are times where there are certain lessons in our lives at a point in our history together. There are words that need to be spoken along with those lessons. And they need to be spoken and listened to, but it takes a humble heart. So we are being forced to see the reactions and the effects of racism and its the consequences and chain reactions that we see, the effects. It's not a new thing. this racism. It's not a new thing for Christians to have to deal with it. You know, those first disciples were a lot like perhaps I am, or maybe you are. They thought that they assumed that they were better perhaps than people that were different than them. They justified their forms of racism. And Jesus had to work very hard with them to teach them different. Remember in the book of Luke, chapter 9, the disciples had tried to go to a Samaritan village, and the Jews and the Samaritans had very strained relationships for centuries and centuries. There was some racial differences, but not that much, but some. They believed much the same things, only because of political issues. The northern kingdom worshipped in Samaria, at Bethel. And it was really about the political division between the northern and southern kingdom. And the northern king, originally Jeroboam, didn't want people to go back to Jerusalem for fear that he might erode his power. And so he hijacked the worship of Yahweh for his own political agenda. That became the sin of Jeroboam, or at least one of them. And there was great prejudice, and they wouldn't talk to each other, and they looked down on each other between Jews and Samaritans. It went both ways to some degree, but especially coming from those disciples. And when they went to a Samaritan village and they found that they were not well received, they were so angry, they came back to Jesus. And in verse 54 of Luke 9, it says, when the disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, like during the time of Elijah? Well, isn't that how we can be sometimes? Those disciples, even in the presence of Jesus, wanting to call fire down on those who disagreed with them or were different from them. But listen to how Jesus responded in verse 55. But he turned and he rebuked them. That's a very strong word. And he said, you do not know what kind of spirit you are of. He just was grieved. You don't know what kind of spirit you're of. They didn't know. And you know, I can say in my own life, and maybe you can say, if you could get honest, that you don't know when we're like that. We don't know we're even being like it. Later, the apostles spoke against the sin of racism, but they used the term partiality, and that was what a lot of it was. It could be partiality on a lot of levels. And even in our own denomination, you know, Southern Baptists, the SBC was formed as a result of stubborn racism in 1845. They broke away from the Trilineal Baptist Convention, which is a national convention. And you know what the reason was? Because that group had said that no one who owns slaves can be a missionary. And so they got angry. They were slaveholders, justifying it with Scripture. And they broke away and formed the Southern Baptist Convention. And of course, in the ensuing years, the Civil War was fought. The southern states seceded primarily to uphold white supremacy. You read it in their Articles of Confederacy. And they fought a war that claimed over 700,000 American lives. Now later, of course, you say, well, why are you associated with this group? Well, this is way before my time, but later the Southern Baptist Convention repented of its past and repudiated all forms of racism. In 1995, they made it public. It took years. It took 150 years for them to finally do it. And you know why it took 150 years? Because this sin of racism hangs on unless you confront it and you really fight back against it. The sin of racism or partiality is invisible, and it's most invisible oftentimes to the people who are most infected by it. I can speak from experience about my own unconscious racism. It was never intentional. I grew up with a mom that tried to shield me from the racism of her parents. My grandfather was well educated. He was a physician. But you know, she told me one time that when she was a girl, she loved a home that had a bay window but her parents sold it suddenly because a black family moved within 3 blocks. And this was in the North. What I'm trying to say is racism doesn't matter where you're from. It can be passed on unless you're conscious of it. And I spent most of my growing up years in denial of racism, minimizing it, how it hurt people, assuming I didn't have a racist bone in my body. And if you ever say that, I understand how you can feel that way. But then there was a couple that came to our church, a black, James was a black man who was a World War II vet who was retired military. His wife Mary became like a grandma to my kids, and he was a great friend of mine. They were so gracious to me and patient. And he would often complain to me about how he was treated with disrespect and prejudice and racism, even sometimes in church. And you know what? I didn't see it. I couldn't see it. I would minimize it. I would deny it. Yet, they loved me incredibly patiently. And you know what? I assumed that I understood him. I thought I was above all this. I thought that I understood his perspective and his pain, but I'd never really taken time to ask him or to listen. And then when I was in a graduate seminar one time, there was a black pastor, PhD, named Ed, and he was in a seminar group with us, and he turned to us and he said, I'm black, you guys are fine guys, you're all white guys, and you are good men, but you do not know what it's like to be a black man in America. And he said to us, when you go into a store and you see somebody in security or somebody else following you around, here's the difference between you and me. You never wonder whether they're following you around because you're white. You don't. But for me, now maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But because of the culture that we're in, I do wonder, and oftentimes I'm right. Now he said, one day, if you get old, or you get overweight, or you get, or maybe you lose your eyesight, or you have some kind of disability, you could experience discrimination, and you might understand a little more of it. But you see, you don't know what that's really like. I suddenly realized that I'd never ever really listened to James and what his story was and his pain, because I assumed that I understood. I assumed that for reasons I don't know why I would have any experience with this. And I came to know later that he joined the military before he was even of age. He actually joined the Marines, and he got pulled out again, and then he re-enlisted in World War II into the Army, and he was shipped to Europe, and he landed in France, and he fought his way along with his troops. He was in a segregated unit because the military was segregated in those days. He lost a lot of his friends, were killed right in front of him. And then he went to through the Panama Canal, and they went to fight in the Pacific Theater during World War II. And then he came home, and he really told me this. I had to pull it out of him, that when he got out of the military after all of that, came back to North Carolina, had to ride in the back of the bus. I don't know what that would do to somebody. Feel like they had to go around back to drink out of the water faucet, or couldn't go had to go through the colored's door. Now, after I understood that, I began to understand his experience. I didn't really understand it, but I began to at least listen to his experience. We became closer, and he helped open my eyes to my arrogance and my blindness on this subject. It opened me up to see a different history of our country, a different justice that works for some people differently than others, a different pain that some people have that I don't have, a fear that some people have I don't grasp it. And you know what happens when people are in pain? I know when I get in pain, I get angry, or at least tempted to be angry, and that anger, left to fester too long, turns into rage. And there is a place for truth and for anger when things are wrong, when there's injustice. Paul even says this. He says in Ephesians 4:25, therefore, laying aside falsehood, speak truth each one of you with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Be angry, yet do not sin, and do not let the sun go down on your anger, and do not give the devil an opportunity. We should be angry about injustices. And the injustices that people are bringing up in these days, we should want those resolved. And there's a place for anger. It's sin. But we must use it to bring change, not sin by reacting or even not acting at all, never just staying in a defensive pose. You see, it's always when we let anger fester and when we give in to rage, the wheel of our souls leads us and drives us toward destructive ends. But I just want to say about what we're going through now around our country, and as you see it, as you're watching these different news feeds and maybe not watching them, maybe that's better. The causes of this underlying pain must be dealt with. Rage and the riots that some have indulged will not cure the sickness. And they'll do a lot of harm. They'll do a lot of damage to everybody, especially oftentimes to the people that are most. Isn't that the way rage always is? It always ends up hurting the people who are the most angry the most. It hurts their communities. It hurts their lives. That's what happens. So this is wrong, but I want to appeal to you as God's people that we will pray for understanding. We'll try and see this as you will see it and I'll see it as a lesson to learn some things. You see, this rage and the damage that it's doing and the chaos that we see going on and the fact that different people are not there's no calming down. The Bible says a soft word turns away wrath, but a foolish answer stirs up strife. You see, I just want to say that as much bad as can be done through the rage, much good can be done by you and by me with humility and with honesty. The humility to listen and to learn. The honesty to own some things and to rethink some things and maybe to come to the conclusion that you really don't know. You couldn't know. Why should you expect yourself to know if you haven't been in that circumstance and you haven't lived as a person of color in this country? The honesty to make wrongs right where we can and to open up millions of conversations that you and I can have to bring understanding between different kinds of people. To try to understand, because as I said a few weeks ago, and as someone else said much more brilliantly than I did, that we always are down on what we're not up on. When we don't understand people, we tend to get down on them. You see, you have to remember that a multiracial community is God's goal for all of us. Remember what Revelation says? And they sang a new song. This is in Revelation 5:9. They sang a new song saying, "Worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood, men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation." You see? Isn't that great? That's the vision that God has for our future. And it's a good thing, because right now there are many million more non-white Christians in the world than us. There are many millions more black Christians in the world than white Christians in the world. There are your brothers and your sisters all around, both here in this part, black and brown and all different types of people are all a part of that great worship service that God has in mind for us. Now, there's no doubt that in these times ahead, others will not choose love and humility. They will answer rage with more rage. But you and I can't be one of those people. You can't be. You can't help angry people if you are one of them. We are called to be peacemakers, not peace breakers. So as we try to get it together before we come back together, and that's the plan in a few weeks, as we try to get it together before we come back together, you must remember that you've been called as a part of Christ's church. You've been called. What we are called for, why we are called to be that church. And some of us, maybe you, maybe all of us, we need to just shut off the propaganda feeds and on our devices and ask the Lord, we follow, this question. Here's what I'd like you to pray when you get done tonight. Lord, what would you have me to do? We are one in the Spirit. We are one in the Lord. We are one in the Spirit. We are one in the Lord. And we pray that all unity will one day be restored. And they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we are Christians by our